Have anyone here played Risk? Yeah, so you know where Kamchatka is. I've told a couple stories about Kamchatka. You can invade Alaska from Kamchatka. It's in Russia. And in the past, I've talked about being with the reindeer herders and those wild things. And I was thinking tonight, why don't I talk about the other kinds of indigenous people there, the Koryaks who fish salmon and live on the seacoast. And exactly 25 years ago, well, no, not exactly, October 1st, 1998, I flew home on the very last Alaskan Airlines flight from Vladivostok through Kamchatka, Alaska, and Seattle. So it was the last flight home. And in the couple of months before that, I was in Kamchatka trying to get to the most isolated, distant, exotic native village that is in the entire area, called Paren. It's everyone was telling me, Alex, you have to go to Paren. That's where the real Koryaks are. They're so isolated, they've kept all of their traditions. So I made my way north, because it was to the north and the west a bit, and I was in this town called Manili, and all along the way, I'm telling people in airports and things, hey, I'm trying to get to Paren. Do you know how I could get a ride there? Because I knew there weren't regular flights. And so I was letting it be known that I needed to get there. I show up in Manili, and my contact meets me, a friend of a friend. So stay at their house, Milogachils is their name, Nina and Vasily. And the airport person then 2 days later comes to their house and said, it's a village. So the airport is a 5-minute walk away. Says, hey, there's a helicopter coming. Geologists, which actually means wildcat gold miners, are coming through, and they're on their way to Paren. So get your stuff. And so I got all my stuff. I was at the airport, and there were also a good 20 kids there who were trying to get home because school had been out for almost a month, and they're trying to get home in the end of July, kind of beginning of August. And the helicopter lands. It doesn't even turn off its engines. The blades are still spinning. There's dust blowing everywhere because this airport is not paved. And we all rush onto the helicopter, and the person at the airport says, 5 people can come. So there's me and then 20 kids. Because you don't get things done in Russia by following orders. And so we all just pile on, and at that point is the first time anyone says anything about cost. And the woman at the airport gives me a price that is huge, tens of thousands of rubles. It's something like $300 worth of rubles. And I didn't really have that much. So I did plan ahead, though, by having most of my rubles in a money belt secreted away inside my pants, and then some few thousand rubles in my pocket. So I did the old kind of this, pulling my pants pockets out, had all my bills of rubles and said, this is what I have. She looked at that, kind of made a face, gave most of it to the pilot who looked at me, and then he took off, and we went to Paren, and I was like the Pied Piper in reverse. I delivered all the kids to this village for their summer vacation, and that's the best way to get introduced to a village if you're an anthropologist. Bring all the children with you. Everyone thinks you're pretty cool then. And I had a great time of getting to know people, recording their stories, learning a bit more of their particular variation of Koryak, because, kind of like German in the mountains, every village has its own dialect. Well, Koryak is kind of like that too. There's really varies from one to another. And then some people I was staying with decided that they were going to go up the river and to this other village that was even more remote. And they're like, oh yeah, let's get more remote from the remote. And so I got into the deepest nowhere, went from Paren to Upper Paren. It's not quite Heart of Darkness because there's not much of a trees, it's tundra. But now I'm up in this other village thinking, I'm in the middle of nowhere, this is amazing. And the next day, the plane lands, and off gets the plane as a Japanese linguist, kind of doing the same thing. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And how you can be where you think is the middle of nowhere, and no one's ever been there. And of course, people are coming and going all the time. 25 years ago, it was already a small world. But I did a bunch more recordings there and went back down the river, was working with some grandmas who were at the fishing camp on the coast, recorded some stories, who I was really happy to be able to give recordings of those stories to their daughter and grandchildren, great-grandchildren in 2012. What was that, like 14 years later, 2013, 15 years later. And then as I had to leave, the helicopter that said it was coming, and it came over, made one loop, and then went on, which is the pilot version of that. So I had to get a boat across the bay. And of course, the boat is like this little motorboat thing, thinking, well, I can swim, although it's cold water. But the guy didn't go along the shore. He head straight out in the middle, and we hit a barge. There was a fuel barge. And they're saying, yeah, we're going to fuel up. And I'm like, with what? And by the evening, this huge tanker came by. And they're like, hey, there's an American here. You want to talk to him? And they're like, yeah, send him up. So I climbed up into the tanker, and I had dinner with the chief engineer, who spoke excellent English and had a girl in every port, with Singapore and Petersburg and everywhere, all kinds of stories, sailor stories. I'll skip that. And then I got back to Manila and worked there in that main town. And then I flew back to the main airport. And then this man in his leather jacket comes up, flashes his badge. He's with the FSB, the KGB, and he starts yelling at me, asking me where I went and all these questions. And I was trying to answer. I was getting really scared, and I'm talking really fast because they was yelling at me. And then I noticed he wasn't letting me answer questions. He just had to take a box, chew out the American. And then I kind of relaxed. Okay, he's just going to chew me out. And I've been chewed out before, so it wasn't that bad. Thanks.